co-buyers are anyone who is not married to the other person buying the home, or buying in a group. At its core, it's a wealth distribution tool and a wealth creation tool for people, right? So we're giving people access that wouldn't otherwise have access, and we're empowering them by putting them on the ladder of equity building. There's a degree to which our work is to encourage people to dream beyond the American dream, beyond this idea that the thing to do is to be an individual. And the truth is, like, collectivism is a lot easier in a lot of ways.
Hello, Boulder and the wider world. This is the Sharing Boulder podcast. My name is Philip Bogren, and for episode 48, I spoke with Sarah Wells, who is a partner in the real estate agency Live Work Denver, which specializes in co-buying real estate, which is simply a way to buy homes with other people. Sarah is one of the founders of the Queen City Cooperative and is the board chair for the Boulder Housing Coalition, which is a nonprofit that develops affordable rental cooperatives. Sarah and I talked about co-buying as a way for more people to be able to build equity in their home in a housing market gone mad, speed dating for finding co-buyers, and the value of living in community. Earlier this year, I posted a blog article where I estimated that the number of empty bedrooms in Boulder is approximately 30,000 using census data. Recently, Boulder City Council updated the occupancy restrictions, which could potentially make it easier to make better use of those empty bedrooms. I think now is a great time to pivot from occupancy reform to thinking about vacancy reform. This episode is the second in a series that addresses the need to make better use of our available housing stock and practical strategies for doing so. Please see episode 46 with Anna Marie Pluhar for the first episode in this series. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sarah Wells.
We ain't throwing starfish here, now we're having a good party. Talking about structural change. We believe the land is sacred, even beneath that vacant parking lot, where the weeds are doing their best to express the need for something different. Gonna make some space for you and me to live here all together. Gonna make it safe and fun for kids to get around the town. Gonna find me a residential pedestrian district where I can gracefully grow older. Gonna spend my remaining years sharing Boulder.
Sarah Wells, thank you so much for being on Sharing Boulder. If you don't mind just introducing yourself for a minute.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Sarah Wells. I am the co-founder of Queen City Cooperative in Denver, and also a partner at Live Work Denver, which is a real estate team that specializes in co-buying, live, work, and creative spaces and community housing. And I am really passionate about all different types of community housing and about expanding how people can access homeownership.
You live in a co-op yourself.
I do.
Right? Is that okay to
I still
talk
do.
about?
Yeah.
And raising a child in that environment. How's that working out?
Yeah. So I still live in our co-op. We've been there 8 years, and we have a 4-year-old. So now we've been in the co-op without a child and with a child the same amount of time. And I initially thought that our family might outgrow a shared house model when we had a child. And then he was 6 months old when we went into lockdown, and community became more important than ever. And the support that we received from our housemates was so vital to our sanity and ability to thrive. And so now I can't imagine raising a child by ourselves, honestly.
It's so hard. I mean, as someone who tried to do the nuclear family thing in a condo with small kids, it's kind of an impossible ask to tell young parents to be like, hey, go do all this on your own. Mm-hmm. And when you need help, pay for it. You know, it's tough.
Yeah, there was a really wonderful little micro economy that developed in our house during that time. We had a housemate who worked in fine dining. She lost her job because the restaurant closed. We lost daycare, so she became our nanny part-time. And so she was better off. We were better off. So there are those elements, but there's also like, when you're sleep deprived and at your wit's end and like need someone else to hold the baby or need someone else to make you dinner, those options are there too, and we were all there to support each other. So I think that experience reinforced for me not only my desire to continue to live in community, but also to spread the message more widely that it is especially useful and valuable for families.
Well, we kind of just dove right in. I wanted to just say thank you for your service to the community and welcome you a little bit more, because I'm familiar with you through a couple of things. Even though your orbit of influence is mostly Denver, but I know you sit on the board for Boulder Housing Coalition, so I've seen you at different events related to that. And then you're also the real estate agent for David Adamson's project at 750 North Street. And I just, when I go to David's website on that co-op, I don't know how much of that is some of your fingerprints on there. But anyways, I just want to say, you have really sparked in my brain a lot of imagination about what's possible around thinking about, like myself, I want to be a homeowner of some kind at some point. And, but I don't, like my own sense is I don't want to be like just elbowing other people out and getting mine, I want, whatever I do, I want it to be something that is an inclusive approach to housing and brings other people along and makes that the space, whatever space I'm in, it's not like I want everyone to come live with me, but I also don't want to like make my goal to be someone who lives by myself in a large house until I die.
Right. Yeah. Your ownership doesn't need to come at the expense of other people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think that's one of the challenges I have with some of the traditional mindset around like house hacking or which is
flipping or
like people who are setting out to create a rental portfolio so that they don't have to work anymore. Right. That fortune is built on the backs of other people instead of built alongside them.
Yeah.
Right. And so how can we level the playing field to make the entry point to housing more accessible, and then also sharing the appreciation and the equity that comes with homeownership, because the primary way that we create generational wealth in this country is through land ownership. And so how do we make that more possible for more people?
Do you mind answering that question?
Ooh, that's a dull one. I wish I had the perfect answer to that question. My solution and the place where I put most of my energy is through co-buying and shared ownership, right? One of the messages that we have had some good success with recently is the new starter home is a shared home. That if we can get people on the ladder of building equity sooner, then they can build more wealth earlier in their lives and trade up to something by themselves if they decide that that's what they want. But I end up having a lot of conversations with first-time buyers, many of them younger, where we have to sort of unbox that the cards were stacked against them, and it is not a moral failure that they don't have a down payment for a house now.
Explaining to them that the cards are stacked against them.
Yeah.
I assume most young people know that, but they come with some baggage of feeling like
there's some guilt.
They've messed up, like they didn't get on the high earning train or something like that.
Yeah, there's a feeling of like I should have done it differently, or if I had made different choices, then I could be here.
If I hadn't stopped to smell the roses and just worked my ass off from the beginning, it was like maybe I don't know.
If I hadn't pursued that philosophy degree.
Yeah, sure. There's that too. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I wonder if you could just explain your business and how co-buying works. Like, I assume that I've mentioned co-buying every time most of the times that I mention co-buying, people are like, "What's that?" That happened this morning, as a matter of fact, at a medical appointment. And so maybe just start from, a definition
Yeah.
and build up from that.
Sure. So let's call them traditional homeowners. So the standard way that you would consider buying a home is usually individuals or people who are married to each other. Co-buyers are anyone who is not married to the other person buying the home, or buying in a group. So sometimes that is families buying together. I've helped a lot of intergenerational co-buyers where there's, a young family that wants to level up and a parent that wants to age in place. And so we find a home that's going to be good for intergenerational use. Lots of friends co-buy together because they're maybe not getting married yet or not having kids yet or want to raise their kids together. And so we have two families that are in one home.
Sorry, I just made a connection with the last example you gave. It's like, seems like co-buying is a great alternative to a reverse mortgage, perhaps, right?
Yeah,
like maybe,
sure.
if you live in a large house by yourself and you're having troubles paying the taxes, you have a fixed income. If you could find a housemate that wanted to buy some of the equity, that seems like much better, because then you can make the arrangement with that person of like, here's the equity I'm giving you, and then like, maybe I'm going to live on that equity, but then that runs out eventually. But you could have an arrangement that says, hey, I'll rent for some amount or stay here for, I guess you're already dividing the house. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think an antidote to a reverse mortgage is a good example. I've had a few different co-buyers now where there was a parent who had a nest egg from a property, and they could either, buy a condo to downsize, or they could contribute that nest egg to other family members, and then they could own a property together that works for everyone, right? So I think it's also a nice way to allow people to age in place with the support that they need and simultaneously help other members of the family that maybe don't have the leg up that mom and dad had. But yeah, there are all kinds of creative ways to share.
Yeah, I kind of cut you off as you were kind of listing off some of the possible or likely or ones that you've actually been a part of. So that's what's really cool about talking to you is you're actually putting some of these. This isn't theoretical.
It's true.
Right?
I've done it.
Yeah, you've done it.
Yeah. And so I guess to finish the thought of like, what is a co-buyer? It's anyone that's not married to each other in the purchase. And now is the sort of fastest growing segment of buyers. So currently represents about 1 in 3 purchases of single family homes. And
I'm sorry, what demographic is that?
Co-buyers.
Co-buyers. Right now is?
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's way higher than I expected it to be. I thought it was a very fringe kind of.
I don't know that everyone self-identifies as like being a part of the movement of co-buying.
Well, because I suppose it could be a romantic couple that isn't married.
Correct. Absolutely. That still qualifies. And that's a large percentage of that group.
Sure.
So and what our company does, so we teach a class about co-buying. It's an online class and it's free to attend. And we teach people about different forms of community housing. We show some different properties and what it would look like to acquire them with a group. We talk through some of the lending options that are available to co-buyers. So it's really intended to be like an introductory toolbox for how to co-buy or why one might consider that option. And one thing that we cover in the class that is true in most urban environments is a lot of people think like, oh, I'll just wait and save for a down payment until I have enough to buy a place on my own. And the reality with the way that the market has historically appreciated in Colorado is you have to save at a significantly higher rate to keep up with appreciation
you have to save
than
more
most
than
people
your salary.
expect. Well,
maybe not, but yeah.
We did the math. So for like a $300,000 condo in Denver, which is kind of the entry point in our city, you have to save $1,500 a month in order to keep up with the appreciation of that condo.
Wow. Well, so I would think another definition of a co-buyer is someone who lives at the property, right? Because another, like what you said kind of sounds like an LLC. Maybe investors go in in a company and they buy properties. But I assume this is all like resident buyers.
Yeah, so the vast majority of the co-buyers that I work with are all intending to occupy the property together.
Yeah. And then, but do you ever have that? So like, one of the thoughts I have is, typically I think of as an apartment building as something that gets bought by a company or private equity. Do you ever have people go together to like form their own private equity company so they can live in their own apartment building? I've read about this in the New York Times.
I do have people that are buying apartment buildings together.
Okay.
And
that's super cool.
It's really cool. It's exciting. It's exciting to see it happen. I have a group of folks that I'm helping right now. There are 8 of them, and they're buying a 4-plex together. It's 3 couples and then 2 friends. And they have all these questions about how it works. And they're the same questions that I had when I was starting Queen City, and no one had an answer to them. So I feel a little like their co-op mom, like I'm able to answer the questions that I didn't get answers to.
Cool. So one of the things I wanted to ask about is when someone takes this go-buying class and you're helping them explore their options for financing, are they immediately, sort of capped at the what's the phrase, like disadvantaged because they want to do a co-op buying arrangement? I mean, there's mortgage companies that understand what's going on and they'll work. You get the same kinds of deals as if you were like a nuclear family going in on this? Yeah,
you do. So the loans are the same. A family buying can use the same loans as friends who are buying. And they don't really differentiate based on relationship. Yeah. So that's a huge plus. And I think something that a lot of people don't know, they assume that they have to use a different loan if they're buying as friends, but you can use the same loan products, which come at the same interest rates. And for the most part, you can combine in your loan application all of your income, all of your debts. And so, if you, like, let's say you're qualified to buy something at $350,000 and I'm qualified to buy something at $350,000. For the most part, we can start looking at $700,000 properties together.
Okay. Cool.
So it really does significantly increase what's possible for people.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this is a very exciting time to be kind of introducing this to Boulder. As you may know,
Yes.
Occupancy has been updated. Occupancy restrictions have been updated recently to 5 unrelated people. So, a $2 million property split 5 ways might be within reach of more people than, all the single people that can buy a $2 million house,
Sure,
or couples or whatever. Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess
for anyone listening, I would love to help you buy a $2 million
property.
property.
We'll totally put links, and I'll add a little introduction on the front end of this. Make sure people know. Remind me the name of your company, though.
Live Work Denver.
Live Work Denver.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I've helped several co-buyers in Boulder and Boulder County.
Oh, nice.
So.
So what I wanted to ask about next is how do you find co-buyers? And so maybe I'll just ask that.
How do I find co-buyers?
Question.
Yeah.
Because you're almost like a dating service to some extent, right?
Oh, how does someone find co-buyers to buy with?
Yeah.
Okay. So most of the groups that I have helped have had existing relationships with each other. So they're friends that come together. Part of the support that we provide in the class and in some of the social events that we produce is like encouragement and some coaching around how to talk about your vision. Because I feel if you can adequately articulate what it is that you want to create, then you will identify what are the potential connections around you in your existing network, or maybe one circle out of your existing network, that might be good partnerships. So if you, for example, are saying, I'd like to co-buy something sometime, right? That's a really different pitch from I'm really interested in finding a property that is close to downtown. I'm really motivated about intergenerational living. I really want to have my kids grow up with other kids in community.
Yeah.
I love the historic charm of older buildings, right? That starts to actually paint a more specific picture that other people can say yes to.
Nice.
So for me, it is about creating opportunities for people to create connections. And we have some social events where we've done that, and we'll continue to do that. But it's also about helping people fine tune their pitch so that more people can respond to it.
Yeah, that's really cool. You gave some earlier. You gave some examples of the different kinds of people who co-buy, but it's kind of amazing the variety of things that are in people's visions of what they want. And I know this because I went to one of the speed dating events that you hosted, and it was at a table about this size, and we sat on opposite sides of the table, and you spoke with the person across from you, and then after 10 minutes we all got up and rotated.
Yep.
And I just was like, the thing I came away with was the variety of things that people were talking about. There was one woman who was a single mom who wanted to find two other single moms to get a property, to have three women together raising kids, which I just think is an amazing vision to articulate and bring to that space. There was a guy there who wanted the full-on co-op, 10 to 12 adults is what he said, which is what he wanted. Another person was like, I want to find one housemate to share like a small house. And then I assume there's other people who are just like, I want half of a duplex.
Right.
So,
yeah, keep it simple.
Yep.
Yeah, people have different visions and different motivations. And I think if you can find other folks that share a version of your dream, then that's going to help get you through whatever roadblocks come up in buying a property or developing a community together.
Have you actually had a large co-op that got purchased by the people that live there, like a 10 to 12 size co-op?
I've had several. I've had maybe 4 clients who ran collective houses that they also lived in, that purchased new properties to either move or expand to. One of them had been running a collective house for a long time, and then the landlord after they'd been there for a very long time said, okay, I'm done and I'm selling. Enough. Right. And so we found them a new place to go, and now they're owner occupied. They can run that house forever.
What was the ownership model?
Theirs was an interesting situation because a lot of their residents are super low income. And so they had a friendly investor who acquired a property on their behalf. And there's a sort of a longer term transfer of ownership.
Right, to own kind of a thing.
Yeah. And then opportunities for people to earn appreciation that gets gifted to them whenever they leave the property.
So for an investor like that, they had cash, or they were able to finance it through a traditional mortgage? Or
they had some cash. They had a significant chunk of cash, but then the members of the collective qualified to be on the mortgage.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool setup.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if along those lines, do you mind sharing some other success stories that kind of stand out as things that might light some creative imagination in Boulder listeners?
Yeah. So one, so it's I don't know. I feel like I occupy a strange corner of zoning and building knowledge in the work that I do. And so there are lots of houses that I have helped to buy and sell that have multiple kitchens inside of them. And so I'm very familiar with Denver's rules around how you are allowed to have 2 kitchens. And we've sold several houses that sort of navigated that in a bizarre way. One that stands out in particular was an intergenerational co-buy. So there was a teacher, an art teacher, who bought a property with her father, and it was originally a single family home. Some time ago, someone had converted it into a triplex, but never formally changed the zoning to a triplex.
Never told the city about it.
Never told the city. And so we attempted to finance it using a single family home loan. And the appraiser was like, this is not a single family home. Okay. And eventually, we were actually able to work with the seller to remove a couple of ovens from the property, and essentially then they were able to appraise it as a single family home. So that really felt like a win for that buyer, right? Because she was able to acquire a property that had 3 functioning units inside of them, one for her, one for her father, and then one for a future community member that could participate. That was really her way of being able to live in the community that she serves as a teacher, which otherwise would have been impossible.
Awesome. Well, you said intergenerational arrangement, which I think is kind of an ideal that more of us should aspire to, because we're stratified and segregated in so many ways when it comes to housing. One of the things you read about is how in the suburbs, when they're building new developments, this neighborhood and that neighborhood, it'll be stratified by income differences of 10 or 20%, and you have just like a lot of homogeneity and along a bunch of demographic variables. And one of the things I feel like is most unfortunate is like people are the same age, like are the same stage in life. And I just love the idea of as I grow older to still be connected with younger people, and I like the idea of kids having access to lots of adults and other kids, and not being pinned in a backyard, that kind of a thing. Well, I guess like one specific question I have is, have you had lots of families work together for co-buying? I know you mentioned that you have your child in a co-op, but I don't know if that child's an outlier or if there's lots of this going on. I would love to tell me that lots of this is going on.
I want more of it to be going on.
Yeah.
So I think it has been very clear to me that single parents understand this concept with almost no extra needed explanation, right? And nuclear families that are intact, I guess, have.
Not to strengthen this metaphor,
nuclear families that have 2 caregivers, right? They have a feeling like they should be able to make it work, right? Yeah. Like we've achieved it. We have our own place. We have our own little box. Yeah. But I think COVID especially proved to us that is not true, right? Or that that's actually quite difficult. So I think families are coming around to it. And that's really the intention for my next project, is to have something like we had for Queen City, but to do it on a larger scale so that we can create more private suites for families that also feature a generous amount of common space. Cool. So essentially,
it sounds a little like a hybrid between co-op and co-housing.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like in between. Interesting.
Yeah, that's my hope. I think if we can create so for example, in our house, my partner and I occupy the 3rd floor. We have our own bathroom. We have a space on the 3rd floor that has our bed and our closets, and then a small living room, like a tiny living room. But it's enough space for us to go and spend some time as a family if we want to be out of the fray of everything else, right?
The board game party going on downstairs or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So we have somewhere else to go. My son has his own room. So maybe as a family unit, we occupy 400 square feet of private space. And that feels like enough for us.
That's currently what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that feels like enough for us because we have access to a library and a dining room and a living room and a big kitchen and a backyard, right? And so can we do that for other families in a bigger home?
Yeah.
And I think that
So when you say it's like a personal project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, cool.
So anyone who's inspired listening to this, please get in touch.
Uh-huh.
There's a 12,000 square foot mansion in Denver that I'm eyeing right now. I think there's a real opportunity for us to retrofit some historic homes to be more family oriented co-housing.
Well, 12,000 square feet divided by 400 square feet. That's like
it's a lot of families.
That's a lot of families.
Yeah.
Do you bump up against occupancy limits in Denver with a place that size?
We do.
And
yeah.
So but there's a co-op ordinance in Denver too. So
there is not yet a co-op ordinance in Denver. There are occupancy allowances. We have a single room occupancy allowance. So if a home allows multi-units in its zoning and is still a single family home, you can use what is like functionally a rooming house for the zoning.
Well, some of those older mansions might actually happen to just be in zoned areas like that.
A lot
Is
of
that
them
true?
are, because the city kind of grew up around them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's promising.
So it's possible. Yeah, I think it's like, I was just talking about this with my team earlier today. Families in particular will often say, I would love to be in community, but I could never share my own kitchen. And I'm always like, okay, tell me more. Like, why do you think that? And then the next words out of their mouth are, well, when I was in college, right? And I'm like, okay, well, are you the same as you were when you were in college?
This is a point that's worth a little exploration, because in the way I see the world, there's like two kinds of people. And when it comes to the kitchen, there's people who believe the sink is for dirty dish storage, and people who believe that the sink is for washing dishes. And those two kinds of people have they'll fight to the death on this issue.
Yeah. So we have a rule in our house called the Kennard principle, because our housemate named Kennard brought it to us.
I love it already.
And the rule is you can never leave dishes in the sink.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we're a little militant at our house, but it leads to a well-functioning home.
Interesting. I'm a late convert to the anti-Kennard rule, which is the sink is specifically for dirty dish storage.
Storage of dirty dishes.
And then so what you do is when it's time to do dishes, you just take everything in the sink and put it in the dishwasher, turn on the dishwasher and walk out. And if it doesn't go in the dishwasher, then you get rid of it.
Got it.
So.
Well, I could see that if we were going to live together, we might need to have a facilitated meeting to come to an agreement.
Yeah, totally. I convert back and forth, perhaps. I don't know. But anyways.
I think my point in that is a well-functioning community is built on clear agreements.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
So if your thing is I could never share a kitchen, from my perspective, I'm like, I love sharing a kitchen because a lot of the times it leads to me being fed by someone who's cooking and has extra. Yeah, right. Yeah. Or like. My roommate last winter was like really into making zucchini bread all the time. And those are gifts and benefits that you receive when you share. And so, okay, I'm annoyed sometimes because I come home and there are crumbs on the counter, but how does it ultimately weigh out in terms of benefit and annoyance?
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm curious, do you mind sharing how much a 12,000 square foot mansion costs and how many ways you're hoping to divide that and what that comes out to?
Yeah, it's currently listed at $2.8 million.
Okay.
I've been hoping I might be able to get it for less than that. And we've been sort of looking at 5 to 6 households in that house.
That's less than I expected you to say. I think a 12,000 square foot house in Boulder, I think, would be a bit more than that.
Well, but it's interesting though. So I'll say, a lot of YIMBYs have pretty negative things to say about landmark preservation. But I would say that I think there's an opportunity for cooperatives to use landmark buildings because they are often quite large, and developers often don't want to buy them because you can't change them.
They're not
right?
flippable.
Yeah. And so is there some potential synergy with some of these larger properties that where like we do want to occupy them essentially as they are? So I really want that to come into reality in a way that I get to enjoy.
Yeah, awesome. I hope that for you too. I've had a bunch of daydreams about possibilities along those lines. What you just said is kind of one of them. Like take some multi-million-dollar house and figure out how to divide it by the right number of people so that it's affordable for me and the others, and figure out. But then I guess there's always like, is it going to be a co-op style arrangement, or are you going to try to carve it into different units? And will the city allow that? And one model I've been thinking about recently is like, hey, if I offered to pay to have a ADU built and then went and lived in that ADU. Have you ever had someone do that? Like take a large yard and put an ADU in the back and say, hey, I would like to kind of pay my way into your backyard?
I have not successfully done that yet, but I've started that conversation with a lot of people.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. One of the challenges with ADUs is just the cost to build them.
Yeah.
I think it's coming down a bit now, but last year I spoke to a contractor that specifically works almost exclusively in ADUs, and he was quoting something like $400,000 to build it, start to finish. So,
what about some of the prefabbed ones?
Modular.
Yeah, the modular ones, because some of those look like they're coming along in terms of really high quality and very functional. I don't know what they look like on the outside.
Yeah, I think like so what happens sometimes is people will sort of go down the rabbit hole on the modular home, and there are like Studio Shed is a local company where you can essentially build out an ADU on their website and they'll price it out for you. And
ship it to you. They'll like still start.
Yeah.
they'll put
like,
the order
ready.
into the factory.
Put your credit card
yeah.
in.
Okay.
But that doesn't include like sewer tap fees and electrical hookups and all of the plans that you need to submit to the building department. And so the cost of the actual home is not all in the complete cost.
But even still, I would think if you spent $100,000 or $200,000 on a modular home and then added in the thousands of dollars for the other things, or is it tens
Probably
of thousands?
50,000.
50,000 for the other things,
Yeah.
so 250,000 maybe. I don't know. I'd like to start pencil
still
some of that
cheaper
out.
than a condo, right?
Yeah.
And you get the benefit of community. The challenge is we don't have great financing tools for building ADUs.
Oh, I meant to ask about that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't get the same loan offerings from the mortgage broker.
Because it's
riskier.
Most of the mortgage products that we have in the United States are built to incentivize purchase of a single-family home. An accessory dwelling unit is considered accessory, right? So it's not. It doesn't have the same definition and benefit. That being said, we're in a housing crisis. We're talking about it locally. We're talking about it nationally. The Biden administration has put out several notices about wanting to provide more financing tools for alternatives, or what are the ways that we can create gentle density. And I think building homes in people's backyards is a great way to do that. And we saw a version of that attempt with the land use bill at the state legislature last session. And there was some pushback, right, of people not wanting to see a neighbor across their backyard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what's this podcast missing? What do listeners want to hear from you that they should know? What a terrible question.
Yeah. I think it's been an interesting journey when I when I first decided to get my real estate license, I was like, oh, I don't know. Do I want to become a realtor? Many of them are so gross. And because there's the idea that like housing justice is not in alignment with the commodification of real estate.
Yeah, or with markets.
Yeah.
Or building a business. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think where I've sort of come personally is that as long as we are in this system of commodification of real estate and real estate being the primary driver for generational wealth, I'm going to make it my mission to make generational wealth accessible to as many people as possible. And I think one of the initial points that people come to when I talk about co-buying is affordability. But really at its core, it's a wealth distribution tool and a wealth creation tool for people, right? So we're giving people access that wouldn't otherwise have access, and we're empowering them by putting them on the ladder of equity building. I mean, there are some insane statistics around the average savings that a renter has versus the average savings and equity that a homeowner has, and it's a difference in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, one of the survey questions that they ask people sometimes is like, if you had to come up with $10,000 next week, could you do it? How would you do it? You know, and then the answers really vary across these things.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that has come up recently, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'll say it, right? A lot of people, when they come into the co-buying conversation, they think that they have to be equal partners and bring an equal amount of money. And the reality is that you don't have to do that.
It doesn't have to be equal shares.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be equal shares.
And it doesn't even make sense, right? Like a child can't bring a share.
Right, but even friends, right? Yeah. So earlier this year, I helped two best friends. They'd been roommates for 10 years, so they knew that it was going to work for them to live in a house together. One of them had like a well-paying institutional job. The other one is an actor. So his income was extremely variable, and they didn't know how to approach the agreement together. And they were still in a situation where where the friend with the institutional job couldn't quite afford the thing that she wanted, but by adding him was actually able to unlock that. And so I think sometimes there's this feeling of like, oh, I don't really have anything to offer, or I don't have a down payment. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. And I think one of the things that I enjoy about my work is taking in all of the data and seeing what kind of solution can I put out.
Facilitating the conversation, helping people like think outside the boxes they've come in.
They've put themselves in.
They've put themselves in. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it makes me think that there's issues around the amount of equity. There's issues around the amount of the house that is like maybe your private space or storage or whatever, and that you can distribute that differently. And each house is going to have interesting constraints on that anyways. Like most houses aren't going to be easily perfectly divisible for the parties that want to live there together. Right.
And almost inevitably everyone is going to have to make some degree of compromise. Right. And so one of the things that a lot of people think about or bring up to me when we talk about co-buying is what happens when things, like I had a question in the last co-buying class that was like, what happens when it fails?
When the shit hits
the
fan.
What happens when it goes wrong?
Yeah.
And my first answer to that is, well, what happens when it goes wrong with a married couple? Like, it's not different. Yeah. Right.
It's going to hurt.
People breaking their relationship and going their separate ways is the same in a friendship as it is in a marriage in terms of the legal sharing of property. But we do, in our services, provide counseling and examples of co-buyer agreements, which is a legal document that outlines.
What did you call it?
A co-buyer agreement.
Co-buyer agreement. Yeah.
Yeah, it outlines.
This is the prenuptial.
It's the prenuptial agreement. Yeah.
Yeah.
It operates very much the same way, right? And just as you should draw up a prenup when everyone is happy, you should create the co-buyer agreement when everyone is happy. Do it at the beginning.
Yep.
Don't wait until something has gone wrong. And it can include things like how long, what's the initial hold time of the property. I have co-buyer groups who say, okay, we're going to hold it for 3 years and then we're going to see how we feel. Right.
Yeah.
It also outlines like how the appreciation works over time, because if people put in different amounts for the down payment, but then they're paying the same on the mortgage every month,
Oh, sure.
then their equity is going to change.
That's an interesting point, because that's another way to sort of carve up the equity is there's the down payment and there's the mortgage payments. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so I've had lots of co-buyers who don't have much to contribute to a down payment, but they can swing.
They have high income.
They can swing a monthly mortgage payment, right? And so that's their way to build equity over time. But it also includes like, can I put a renter in? How do you deal with sweat equity in a co-buyer agreement?
Yeah.
All of those different what if scenarios maybe not all of them. I probably don't have a complete knowledge yet.
So you have templates, or you have examples of things that are the sweat equity, the down payment, the mortgage payment, we
have some guidance. So people who are coming now can benefit from all of the learning that the people before them have done.
That's amazing. What a great resource that is. Awesome. What's your team like?
We have 3 people on our team. Laura, started as my mentor, now my partner.
Nice.
She has been in the business for 17 or 18 years. So she went through the 2008 crash, has some battle stories around that. And she really built her business on helping artists purchase property.
Interesting.
And works a lot in live work spaces. And then we also have Bree, who got her license a couple of years ago. And she has lived experience in co-buying and in collective living. So all of us have some lived experience in kind of what we're selling.
And then like any good real estate agency, you have preferred lenders who kind of know what you're up to and how to like navigate some of the corner cases.
Yeah, we do. So for example, we have a lender we work with that he's co-taught the co-buying class with us from the beginning. And so he's really passionate about co-buying and really patient at getting everybody, figured out.
Mm-hmm.
I have other lenders that groups have approached, and they'll come to me and say, my lender told me you can't have more than 3 people on an application. And I said, well, your lender just doesn't want to do that work. So lazy. That's wrong. Yeah.
That's funny.
So there are some people that don't understand it or don't want to deal with it. But we have some good relationships with people who are excited about it.
Well, I wanted to circle back to this notion of wealth building, because one of the things that I'm fond of thinking about or talking about is how, like, despite the monetary wealth and the material wealth that we have, we're so depraved in so many ways in terms of social isolation and in terms of like feeling like we have time to be creative, or, there's just like our mental health, like I feel like there's a lot of ways for GDP to grow if we measured it differently, like,
Sure, yeah.
And one of the things I think about with wealth creation is like, I want to be surrounded by people that I care about and that care about me, and I want to feel whole and feel like I'm connected to others. Right. And I know when you said wealth, I lost the word.
Generation.
Wealth generation. Yeah. That it was more about, numbers and cents on spreadsheets. But I think there's really also, like, you're building wealth in other ways too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really at the heart of the work that I do, right? It's like the thing that catches people is the money savings, because we've been trained to want to make money and to own property, right? But the people that I live with are like a family to me. My dad, which also like, that was also why it was so painful when we were going through the group living fight in Denver, was basically this feeling of...
What's the group living fight? This is a political battle that was going on at the Denver level. Yeah.
So in Denver, we changed the number of unrelated adults that are allowed to live together from 2 to 5. So you're welcome, Boulder. That's fine.
Yeah, thank you, Denver.
So I spent 4 years with my family in the newspapers talking about why we should be able to live together.
Yeah. Your co-op, Queen
Our
City
co-op, yeah. And we had a secret meeting of all of the illegal collectives, and essentially said that we as Queen City felt comfortable putting ourselves out there, coming out in the community, because we were owner occupied. So we felt like we had some more power than a lot of the rental collectives that were out there. But we live like a family.
Yeah.
My housemates have a strong relationship to my son, and we eat dinner together, and we share chores, and we fight sometimes. And, it feels much more like a family relationship than like a friendship in the ways in which we're living. And I also feel, to just circle back to something you said earlier about intergenerational sort of keeping you in the loop of cultural changes or what's happening, or just generally more connected.
I mean, just the human experience sort of, demands that we're with lots of different kinds of people, or at least, different aged people.
Yeah. So we have 4 generations in our house right now, right?
Wow.
We have a Gen Xer, we have millennials, we have Gen Z, and then whatever they're going to name my 4-year-old's generation, right? And so we have a pretty wide breadth of experiences, and also a lot of economic diversity, a lot different racial backgrounds, right? And so because I am closely connected in a quasi-familial way to people with that diverse of a background, I have greater capacity around empathy for other things that are happening in our city, right? So if I am, if I'm doing well financially, I'm probably not all that worried about the cost of groceries. But if I'm sitting every day with someone who is really sweating, being able to afford food, right, then that's in my consciousness in a way that it wasn't before. Wow. Right. Or if I see someone that's struggling with implementing SNAP benefits because they lost their job, that's a perspective that I wouldn't have if I was just in my own little box.
Right. Well, related to wealth generation, in the kind of alternative sense that I just gave, I also one of the things I think about is unlocking human potential, and one example that I love is the Wild Sage co-housing community, which happens to house our mayor and several advisory board members and community activists. And this little neighborhood has such a disproportionate impact on our city. And I'm just kind of curious if you've seen that sort of thing where the people that, I don't know if maybe it's a self-selecting demographic that they like co-buying, or if the co-buying has a way of unlocking human potential in a way that is outsized.
I would love to study that. That's so interesting. How college houses would have themes, right? This is the vegan house. This is so we joke that the theme of our co-op is self-actualization.
Oh, nice. That's no small thing, man. Right? That's cool.
So I have definitely seen, we haven't housed a mayor yet, but I have definitely seen people make huge strides while they live with us because they are because they're surrounded by people that want to problem solve and want to support them. I have a housemate now who was working part-time service industry jobs forever, doesn't have a college degree, and just got a job working in housing with a local municipality. Because of some advocacy and an ability to talk about their lived experience, that's going to move them into a salaried job for the first time in their lives.
Wow,
right?
Awesome.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity to help each other in these micro communities for sure.
Amazing. Well, that fills me with hope and excitement. I want to solve this puzzle for myself and my family, and we've been renting for a long time, and I want to start kind of navigating the space of what's possible for us along these lines. And I hope that lots of other people start thinking about this too, because I feel like this gamble that we often make about well, I'll just drive to the suburbs until I can afford the size house that I imagine that I will be happy in. That's a dream that needs to die quickly, like, and I want for my city to have people in it that are connected and feel housing secure and feel like they can self-actualize.
Right.
Like I want to live in a house that's themed as the
house of self-actualization.
Self-actualization. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think there's a degree to which our work is to encourage people to dream beyond the American dream. Can I say that? Like
sure.
Beyond this idea that the thing to do is to be an individual, because we definitely have like individualistic propaganda in this country. And the truth is, like, collectivism is a lot easier in a lot of ways. Like, sure, you have to make clear agreements and interact with a lot of humans, but you also can like share groceries and childcare and lawn care. Like I told somebody recently, I haven't taken out the trash in 8 years because I don't pick that chore, right? But the trash still gets taken out.
The lawn care is one of these things that just is crazy making for me. Like, I do not want to own a lawnmower. I do not want to touch a lawnmower. I don't want to smell other people's lawnmowers. I don't feel like we should live in a society where there's 4 lawnmowers per acre. Like, it's just like, I don't know. If you think individualism is so great, then I don't know. You must love the smell of lawnmowers. Okay. Well, any parting shots for this? This has been
I think Rethink the American Dream is a pretty good note to end.
Well, this makes me think, do you have a book recommendation?
I do. I'm obsessed with a book that came out this summer called Everyday Utopia by Kristen Goodsey. She delves into collectivism at a pretty deep level and talks a lot about the history of utopian societies and kind of what they got right and what they got wrong, and how we might flex or change for a better life in the U.S. So it was a really validating read for me, and I think a nice read for anybody that's interested in these topics.
I'm so interested in these topics, and I bought the book. I'm 100 pages into it. Just finished chapter 3 last night, and I'm excited to read more. I'm just I think I'm still wading through the history stuff, but it was actually interesting reading about kibbutzim. That's the plural,
kibbutzim,
right? Kibbutzim, given all the things that are going on in the world. And I would love to have urban kibbutzim.
Yeah, there was an article about
here.
To have it here.
Clear. Yeah.
There was an article about our co-op that had some good traction on a national site, and this woman in Jerusalem got in touch with me and said, "Should I bring my kibbutzim idea to Denver?" And I was like, "Please, yes, absolutely." So maybe it will come.
Cool. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Great.
Gonna find me a residential pedestrian district where I can gracefully grow older. Gonna spend my remaining years sharing Boulder.
Thank you for listening to Sharing Boulder. Please support the podcast by sharing it with your friends and neighbors. You can contact me at linktree/Philip Ogren, which you can find by visiting sharingboulder.us, where you can also find show notes and previous episodes. This episode of Sharing Boulder was produced by Philip Ogren and edited by Katie Avery. The music was created by Nathaniel Ogren and Sack Lunch. Keep sharing, Boulder.